Every time I think about California, I imagine sunshine, beaches, and palm trees, not ghosts. But when you start digging into its darker corners, you realize this golden state hides some of the most chilling stories in America. From grand hotels where guests never checked out to forgotten hospitals echoing with whispers of the past, California's haunted places have a strange way of pulling you in. I didn't believe in ghosts before, until I stood inside one of these locations myself. What I felt there still sends shivers down my spine every time I remember that night. If you enjoy exploring real haunted places and mysterious stories like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel. There's a lot more chilling adventures waiting for you. 1. Queen Mary Ship, Long Beach, California. I still remember the first time I saw the Queen Mary. It was a foggy evening in Long Beach, and the ship stood there like a giant ghost frozen in time. The sunset had faded behind the clouds, leaving only a dull orange glow reflecting off the calm water. I had come here because I'd read countless stories about this ship being haunted, but honestly, I didn't believe much of it. Still, there was something about the Queen Mary that pulled me in, like she wanted me to see something for myself. The moment I stepped on board, everything went quiet. The air felt thick, almost heavy, and there was this faint smell of rust and saltwater mixed with something older, something like smoke and old wood. My shoes echoed against the metal floors as I walked through the long corridors. The ship was massive, but strangely, I didn't see anyone around. Just the sound of distant waves hitting the hull. As I reached one of the decks, a cold breeze brushed past me, even though the air was still. I remember laughing nervously to myself, thinking it was just my imagination. But then I heard it, footsteps. Slow, steady, right behind me. I turned around instantly, no one. My heart started to beat faster. I tried to brush it off, but that uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. It was like the ship was alive, watching me. Down near the boiler room, things got worse. The lights flickered, and I could hear a soft humming, like someone whispering through the pipes. A tour guide once told me that during World War II, a young sailor was crushed by a heavy door during a drill. They say his spirit still walks that hallway. I didn't believe it until I stood there myself. The air dropped in temperature so fast that I could see my breath. Then, just for a second, I heard metal creak behind me, that same door, the one that killed him, slowly moving as if someone was there. I froze. My phone light flickered, and suddenly I caught a glimpse of something, a shadowy figure standing near the end of the hall. I blinked, and it was gone. But the sound of footsteps started again, this time circling me. Every instinct told me to leave, but curiosity held me still. I whispered, "Is anyone here?" The ship went dead silent. And then, one soft knock echoed from the metal wall beside me. I ran. Not because I was terrified, but because in that moment, I knew the stories were true. Whatever haunts the Queen Mary isn't just an echo of history, it's something that never left. When I finally reached the upper deck, the night air hit me like a wave. I looked back down the hallway one last time, and there it was again, a faint light flickering deep inside, moving slowly as if someone was walking with a lantern. People say the Queen Mary is just an old ship with stories. But I've been there. I've felt the cold, heard the whispers, and seen the shadows that don't belong. Maybe some ghosts don't haunt places because they're angry or lost. Maybe they stay because, after all these years, this ship is still their home. 2. Winchester Mystery House, San Jose, California. I visited the Winchester Mystery House on a cold morning in San Jose, the kind of day when the air feels still and heavy, like the world is holding its breath. I'd read about this mansion before, its endless hallways, staircases that led to nowhere, and doors that opened into walls. But reading about it was one thing, standing there in front of it was something else entirely. The house looked alive, as if it was breathing through its walls. When I stepped inside, I was hit by the smell of old wood and dust. The floor creaked beneath my shoes, and the sound seemed to echo through the endless maze of rooms. I was alone, or at least, I thought I was. Every corridor twisted in a strange way, and every door led somewhere unexpected. One moment I was in a bright sunlit hallway, and the next, I found myself standing in a dark, narrow passage that smelled faintly of burning candles. They say Sarah Winchester built this house to confuse the spirits of those killed by her family's rifles. I tried not to think about that, but the deeper I went, the heavier the air became. It felt like the walls were closing in. At one point, I walked up a small staircase that led directly into the ceiling. I remember standing there, confused, wondering why anyone would build something like this. That's when I heard soft footsteps above me, even though there was no room there. I turned around quickly, my heart pounding. The hallway behind me was empty, but I swear I saw a shadow move across the wall, slow, almost careful. I called out, thinking maybe it was a staff member, but no one answered. The silence that followed was the kind that rings in your ears. Then, faintly, I heard a woman humming. It was distant at first, like it was coming from another room, but it grew louder. I followed the sound, turning corners, climbing narrow staircases, until it suddenly stopped. I found myself in a small room with a single window and an old rocking chair. The chair was moving, just slightly, back and forth, even though the air was completely still. I froze, watching it, every muscle in my body tense. Then I heard the humming again, right behind me this time. I turned around, but there was no one there. Only the faint smell of perfume, something floral and old-fashioned. My hands were shaking. I whispered, "Mrs. Winchester." I don't know why I said it, but I did. And as soon as I did, the rocking chair stopped. Just like that. The silence that followed was thick, almost pressing against my chest. When I finally made my way back outside, I looked up at the house one last time. The windows seemed to shimmer in the light, almost like eyes watching me leave. People say the Winchester house is just an architectural oddity, a rich woman's madness. But after walking those twisting halls, hearing that voice, and feeling that presence, I'm certain of one thing: Sarah never really left her house. She's still there, wandering those endless corridors, making sure the spirits never find her. 3. Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel, Los Angeles, California. It was late afternoon when I first arrived at Herring Cole Hall at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York. The building stood quietly at the edge of campus, surrounded by tall, leafless trees that looked like they had been there for centuries. The moment I stepped closer, I felt something shift in the air, a cold, heavy stillness that made me pause for a second. The windows were tall and narrow, and even though the sun was still up, it felt like the light couldn't find its way inside. I remember thinking to myself, this place holds stories that never left. I had heard about the strange events that happened here, footsteps echoing through empty halls, books falling from shelves without reason, and whispers during late-night study hours. But I didn't believe any of it. I thought it was just another campus legend. Still, something about the place pulled me in. I pushed open the old wooden door, and the hinges creaked loudly, breaking the silence. The air inside smelled like old paper and dust, the kind of smell you find in libraries that haven't changed for decades. I started walking slowly between the rows of wooden tables, each one polished smooth by years of students resting their hands on them. The light coming through the stained glass windows painted soft patterns across the floor. It was quiet, too quiet. Then, just as I reached the far end of the room, I heard it, the faint sound of pages turning. I froze. The sound was coming from somewhere near the center of the hall, but no one was there. The desks were empty, the chairs perfectly still. My heart began to race. I tried to convince myself it was just the draft or maybe a loose paper moving on its own. But then I felt something, a sudden, cold breath of air pass right by my shoulder. It was like someone had just walked past me. I turned around instantly, but the hall was empty. My hand started shaking as I took out my phone's flashlight. The beam of light flickered across the room, catching tiny specks of dust floating in the air. That's when I saw it, a shadow, faint but clearly shaped like a person, standing near the far bookshelf. I blinked, and it was gone. But before I could even move, a loud thud echoed from behind me. One of the heavy old books had fallen to the floor. I stared at it, too afraid to move closer. It was a thick, leather-bound volume that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The strange part was, it had fallen open to a page that had a student's name written faintly in the corner, a name I recognized from one of the old campus archives. That student had died in the 1920s. I didn't stay long after that. As I walked back toward the door, I could feel the same cold air following me. Just before I stepped outside, I heard one last sound, a whisper, soft but clear, saying my name. It felt close, almost next to my ear. Even now, when I think about that night, I can still hear it. Herring Coal Hall may look peaceful from the outside, but once you step inside, you realize it's not just a building, it's a memory that never lets go. 4. Preston Castle, Ione, California. I still remember the day I drove to Ione, California. The town was quiet, surrounded by dry hills and old trees that looked like they'd been watching over the place for 100 years. My reason for coming was simple: I wanted to see Preston Castle for myself. I had seen photos before, the red brick building standing tall and half broken, but nothing could have prepared me for the way it felt to stand in front of it. It wasn't just abandoned, it felt like the building was waiting. The moment I stepped inside, the air turned cold. The sunlight barely touched the hallway, only falling in broken lines through the cracked windows. My footsteps echoed as I moved forward, and the smell of dust and damp wood filled my lungs. Every sound, every creak, made my heart jump. I could almost imagine what this place must have been like when it was alive, full of young boys, laughter, and shouting. But that was long ago. Now, it was silence and shadows. I reached a staircase that curved upward. The steps groaned under my weight, and with every one I took, it felt like the air got heavier. Halfway up, I heard something, a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was the wind slipping through the cracks, but it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like words. I froze. The whisper came again, clearer this time. It was a boy's voice, soft, almost afraid, saying something I couldn't quite understand. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. On the second floor, the hallway stretched endlessly, lined with rusted doors. Some were slightly open, others still locked. I passed one room and caught a smell so strange, like burnt metal mixed with something sour. When I pushed the door open, it creaked loudly, echoing through the hall. Inside, there was an old bed frame and something scratched into the wall, 3 words, "Don't come back." My stomach tightened. I turned to leave, but a loud bang echoed from the far end of the hall. It was like someone had slammed a door shut. My legs stiffened, my breath caught in my throat. I shouted, "Hello," but no answer came. Only the sound of slow footsteps moving toward me. I backed up, step by step, until my back hit the cold wall. The footsteps stopped. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then, from one of the rooms nearby, I heard crying, soft, distant, like a child's. I ran. I didn't even care where I was going, I just wanted out. When I finally burst through the front doors, the sunlight hit me like a flood. My hands were shaking, my heart beat loud in my ears. I looked back at the castle one last time. For just a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the upstairs window, small, pale, and still. People say Preston Castle is just another old building with a dark history. But I've been there. I've heard the whispers. I've seen the shadow in that window. And I know, without any doubt, some of those boys never really left. 5. Alcatraz Island Prison, San Francisco, California. When I first stepped onto the quiet grounds of Union College in Schenectady, New York, I didn't expect the place to feel so alive. It was early evening, just after sunset, and the last bit of orange light faded behind the tall trees of Jackson's garden. I had read about the strange occurrences here, whispers of footsteps when no one's around, figures seen near the old garden paths, and lights flickering inside locked buildings. Still, standing there myself, I felt something I couldn't explain. It wasn't fear at first, just a strange weight in the air, like the campus itself was holding its breath. I began walking down a stone path that led through Jackson's garden. The leaves crunched under my boots, and a cool breeze brushed against my face. Everything around me was silent, except for the faint sound of running water from the creek nearby. Then suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, steady, following my rhythm. I stopped. The sound stopped. I looked back, no one. Just shadows stretching between the trees. My heart started to beat faster, but I told myself it was probably just the wind or my imagination. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. I decided to keep walking, trying to act normal, but the air felt heavier with each step. As I reached the old stone bridge in the middle of the garden, I noticed a faint figure standing across it, a man, maybe? He seemed to be wearing old-fashioned clothes, the kind you'd expect to see in a painting from the 1800s. I blinked, and he was gone. My chest tightened. The silence after that moment was unbearable. I could hear my own breathing echo through the cold air. I turned around to head back toward campus, but just as I did, the sound of whispering filled my ears. It was faint at first, like a breeze carrying voices, but soon it became clearer, overlapping whispers, too low to understand but too real to ignore. It felt like they were circling me. I started walking faster, my shoes hitting the path harder now. Every shadow looked like it was moving, every flicker of light in the distance looked like someone standing there. When I finally reached the edge of the garden, the whispers stopped. Everything was still again. I looked back one last time, and there, at the far end of the bridge, I saw a flicker of light. Not from a lantern or a phone, but a soft, glowing shape. It hovered for a moment, then slowly faded away into the trees. Later that night, when I asked a security guard about it, he just nodded quietly and said, "You must have been near the bridge. Students have seen him there for years. Some say it's the spirit of a professor who used to walk those paths every evening." Even now, I can't forget the way it felt, that strange mix of peace and fear, like the past was still walking beside me. I don't know if what I saw was real or not. But I do know one thing, in Jackson's garden, you're never truly alone.